Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the Smalletics channel. Today we are talking about intuitive eating versus tracking macros versus tracking calories, what they are and the pros and cons of each and which one would be best for you to start with based on your goals. Inside my program for petite women called the Petite Power Program, it's our 12-week transformation program for petite women. We teach both intuitive eating and tracking macros, never calories only, because that's not helpful and I'll go into why. And a lot of times women will come into the program and say, April and team, where should I start? Should I do intuitive eating? Should I do macros? Like, what's best for me? And we always help them figure out where they should start based on their goals and what their history as well. And then we give them our Smalletics method for both macros or intuitive eating. And most of the time, anyone who starts with macros will transition eventually to intuitive eating. I'd say 100% of the time, because nobody's tracking for their whole life. So let's get into it. I think this is a video that I wish that I had seen for petite women specifically years ago when I was trying to figure out, first of all, why when I was intuitively eating, I wasn't getting results. And second of all, when I finally started macros, why I also wasn't getting results. And just like want to give you guys a shortcut. So I'm going to chat with you guys and give you guys my opinion based on my certifications, but also my experience helping thousands of petite women navigate all of this crazy nutrition stuff, portions. And hopefully by the end of the video, you will know which is right for you, if any of them are right for you. Okay, so let's briefly, just really quickly start with definitions of the three of them. At least I'm gonna say these are really loose definitions because there's a lot of stuff and noise and whatever, especially around intuitive eating. There's a lot of different takes on it and definitions of it. So we'll just go with the hardest one first. Intuitive eating, let's just say intuitive eating is when you eat normal. I really don't like that word because what is normal? But it's the simplest, easiest way that we can kind of talk about it right now if I'm just, being really casual about it. You're just going about your day eating food that looks good to you, right? That's what you could call intuitive eating. However, if you're doing a more structured intuitive eating, it's actually a lot harder to follow than that. And we'll get into that. Okay, next, macronutrients. What are macronutrients? What is counting your macros, hitting your macros mean? It's looking at the composition of your diet. So calories are made up of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So instead of counting the number of calories you consume in a day, you're looking at the number of grams of macronutrients that make up those calories in a day. So for example, you might have 120 grams of protein per day. That could be a target if you are eating, if you're a 120-pound female and you're eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, you might eat 120 grams of protein per day. And if you multiply that out, you'll get a number for the calories. So I think the biggest thing I didn't understand when I first got into this years ago was macronutrients and calories are almost the same thing. Macronutrients make up your calories. But if you just count your calories, you could eat 1,500 calories of carbs and fats and not get the protein that you need or the vitamins or the minerals that you need to build muscle and lose fat. So what I love about macronutrients, and we'll go into like pros and cons and everything, but with macronutrients, you're looking at the composition of your diet, the nutritional breakdown, you're learning what's in your food, and you're looking and tracking not just the total number of calories you're eating in a day. That's not what you're looking at. You're looking at what's the ratio of fats to protein to carbohydrates that I'm eating in a day to make sure I'm fueling my body and going to feel good and getting the nutrients I need. So those are very loose definitions of the three of them. Now, I think a better question also is not which is best, intuitive eating or tracking macros. It's really which is best for you right now, because you could be in a position where tracking macros would be best for you now, but not in the future, and vice versa. And it's really not about what's best, period. There's different approaches here, and that's why we do teach both. Of course, we have an approach for both that is geared towards petite women that I'll share with you today. But I just want you to know there is no perfect right way. There's no one way that is gonna get you to your destination. It's really about thinking about what do I need, what's gonna be best for me. And so I really want you today to just think about that as we're going over the pros and cons. What feels good for you? Okay, so for our pros and cons, we have a pretty extensive list I wrote out for you guys, and we're not gonna go over counting calories because like I just told you, I don't believe in counting calories. I think it's a waste of your time. It's not gonna help you improve your composition of your nutrition or feel good or necessarily lose weight. You could end up losing a lot of precious muscle tissue counting calories but not looking at the composition of your diet. So I'm gonna just say this, I don't believe in counting calories. I don't think it will help you at all. It's better if you want to track something to look at your macros, and if you don't want to look at something, obviously to intuitively eat, but we'll go into that. So macronutrients pros. First of all, it's a great educational tool. You're gonna learn what a protein is, what an example of a fat is, a healthy fat, what an example of a carbohydrate is, and you're gonna start to be able to look at food and know, oh, okay, that's a protein, that's a carbohydrate, that's a fat. And of course, it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take some time as you're getting used to tracking and seeing how MyFitnessPal or the My Macros app categorizes it for you. But it's almost like holding a bar scanner to, like the world and seeing, okay, this is what I'm putting in my body. So off the bat, tracking your macros, even if it's just for a few days, can be an amazing education tool for learning about your food. Another awesome pro with macros is it gives you a starting point. So if you have never tracked before, you have no idea what you're eating, you don't even know how many calories you're eating in a day, and you want to learn more about your food and your caloric intake, and you want to maybe lose some fat, maybe gain muscle, have a body recomp, macros will give you a really nice starting place so that you can see where you're at and then make adjustments to get towards your goal. The most common thing I see with petite women in general actually, is they're under eating protein by a lot. They'll find out that they're short of their protein goal by quite a bit. So it gives you this amazing starting place, and also when you compare it to what you're naturally doing that's not getting you results, you can see very, concretely, okay, here's the little adjustments I can make in the composition of my nutrition that is gonna help me get closer to my goal. And it's like, for me at least, it feels very concrete. It's not like guessing what you should eat for the day. It's like, oh, okay, I need more protein, I'll eat more protein. Another pro is it can really help you learn your correct portions for you based on your goal. And as a petite woman, I find this is really key because we are so used to eating what other people's portions are because we're not, most people aren't as short as us and they're eating big plates of food. I know my boyfriend who's 6'4", if I ate what he was eating every night, I would not be able to reach my goals, and I would also feel sick to my stomach because it's so much food, right? He's eating like 4,000 calories a day. So having your macronutrients is going to teach you your portions for yourself as a petite woman that are appropriate for you, which is an awesome learning experience. Another pro of macros is it teaches you how to eat foods you love in moderation and have balance. So let me give you an example of this. Back when I was in college, I was a college girl, I was so healthy. I steered clear of Snickers and all the quote unquote bad foods. I labeled foods, I did all the bad stuff. I had food guilt, I binge ate, and I restricted foods like crazy. I did not touch unhealthy foods. And it wasn't until I learned that, oh, I can have these things, I just can't have a lot of them. You don't want them to make up 50% of your diet, right? Because you won't feel good. That I started to learn, oh, there is a place for every food in my diet. I don't have to restrict entire food groups just because I don't know how much is gonna hurt me. I can have a little bit and still achieve my goals. So macros can teach you how to have your cake and eat it too, in a way, because you can see, oh, okay, well, if I have a goal for fats today, I can see that a Snickers bar will make up X% of my goal, so here's how I can fit it in, or maybe I have a smaller portion, or whatever, it depends, the variables depend on your goals. But this personally helped me a lot with understanding, okay, I can have these foods and still meet my goals. And what ended up happening is I had to be more consistent with my nutrition because I was eating foods, I was not restricting foods at all. And you guys have probably experienced this. When you restrict a food for a while, you want it more and more and more, and then you end up binge eating it later. So I kind of stopped having those binges because I learned how to just eat the foods that I loved, but in moderation, in a way that fit my overall goal for the day. And then the other pros, I would say, it really helps you learn a processed versus an unprocessed food. Again, that's sort of like number one, with just you learn what a protein, fat, and a carb is. And then it also helps you understand what's actually in your food. So a lot of times we call chicken a protein, right? But chicken also has fat, a little bit of fat in it. It has foods that have a combination of all the macros, but you'll learn what foods have the majority of. So like cheese is another example. It has a lot of fat. We call it a fat, but cheese has a lot of protein too, because it's dairy. So you learn a lot about food. I think that's the biggest thing. It's an awesome learning experience. Okay, let's get into cons of macros, because of course there are cons to be considered here. Of course. So first of all, I'm gonna say flat out, I do not recommend that you start tracking macros if you have a history of disordered eating or you feel very triggered by numbers. If you know that you get obsessive with numbers and it leads you down this bad road, don't track your macros. You don't need to. You don't need to. It's gonna be just stress that you don't need. And instead, I would, as a coach, want to help you get to the bottom of why those are triggering you. Do that inner work, because they're just numbers that we put stories and narratives onto, right? The number on the scale, it doesn't know what weight we should be. It doesn't know what we look like or how tall we are. If I step on the scale as a 5'1" woman and I'm 115 pounds, it doesn't know, versus if my boyfriend Gary steps on the scale and he's 220, it's not going to call anyone any names, but it's ourselves that call ourselves horrible things. So really, if you're triggered by numbers and everything, I wouldn't ever advise you to count macros and force anything. You should really just get quiet and figure out, okay, why am I so stressed by these numbers? That would be what I would suggest. Another con of tracking macros is when you're first getting started. I would say the first week to 2 weeks. I would say the first week. It is time consuming because you have a food scale and you have a new app and you're learning. It's stuff you don't know yet. So I mean, it's like anything. If you went and took a course in school, you wouldn't expect to know it all in a day, right? You have a whole semester. And I think the expectation in health and fitness is like, we want it fast, like we want it tomorrow. We want to wake up and transform. And it's like you have to set the expectation that it's a learning curve. It's gonna take some time. That was my little graph of a learning curve. It's gonna take some time to learn about food, and that could be a con for some people who just aren't interested or don't wanna take the time to learn about it. Another con of macros, it's kind of hard to track when you eat out at a restaurant. You have to kind of already know and already had experience tracking for a little bit, for a few weeks, to be able to go out to a restaurant and look at your food and say, oh, that's 150 grams of chicken and about 50 grams of quinoa. You have to kind of know. And then it gets even more complex if you're tracking a recipe that has a ton of stuff in it and you can't really see what the ingredients are. So if you're eating out all the time, macros are gonna be really hard to do accurately. It's best for homemade foods or just simpler foods in general. But of course, if you're eating out that often, that also could just be a small adjustment you can make if you're looking to have a body recomp, to just eat out fewer times per week. But it's up to you and your lifestyle goals as well. And the last con I have here is just that it's not meant to be a lifestyle. Now, I know we see on Instagram, I know you guys see me tracking my macros in the long term. At this point, everyone is different. You can't compare where you are to where I am. I enjoy tracking macros, and it's very easy for me because I've been doing it for so long, and I don't track it 100% every single day. That would be absolutely crazy. I go eat out at restaurants and whatever, but I'm just saying a con of macros is that it's not a lifestyle. It cannot be done for years and years and years, and it's not meant to be sustainable in that way. It's really meant to be like a crash course in understanding food. So I'll just put that in the con bucket. Okay, let's do the pros and cons of intuitive eating, and then at the end we'll talk about figuring out, okay, which is right for you. Okay, intuitive eating, the pros. The obvious pro is that there's less emphasis on numbers, which can be triggering, and if there's less stress in general around food, hopefully you can make healthier choices and it's not as overwhelming, and maybe that leaves room mentally for you to go to sleep earlier or hit your workouts, and you just feel better without the numbers. That's a huge pro. Another one is that after you've learned it and you've got the hang of it, it is very sustainable because, like I said, you could just go on with your life and continue to see results, and you don't have to weigh things or track or count or anything like that. So it's a really sustainable method in the long run. The other two pros I have here, you can learn balance, what that means for you on an individual level. And then the last one is that you can just feel really in tune with your body. So once you have a really good feel for, you know, your appetite, your appetite and your appetite hormones are in a good place, and I'll talk about what that means. You understand that you might eat more on days that you train and eat less on days that you don't, because your appetite fluctuates, and you could just get in that really good rhythm of like, okay, I feel like I'm giving my body what it needs and I'm listening to it, and I stop eating when I'm full. I honor my hunger, and you can get into that like really great relationship with food. Okay, the cons. Intuitive eating is much harder than tracking macros. It has a much steeper learning curve for a lot of reasons, which we're gonna go into. So the first one here, and this is another con that we'll put on the list, if you've never tracked your calories, you have no idea what you're eating, you don't know that much about food, if you try to go into intuitive eating, you could be severely under eating, or you could be eating in a surplus and overeating, and you wouldn't know because you've never been in that place with food where you know for sure your body's getting what it needs. And here's the second con, or the third con at this point. If you have been under eating for a long time, your metabolism slows and adjusts to that lower point, and now your appetite hormones are not normal. They're not where they should be. That's also going to change, and you're not going to be as hungry. You're going to have a lower appetite. And the same thing can go for if you've been overeating for a while, your body can adjust to that, and you can start to be hungry all the time, and your hunger hormones are also not the best leader for you of when you should eat or when you're full. This is why intuitive eating is so much harder than macros for the person who has never kind of looked at done a food journal before or tracked what they ate for 3 days. That's a food journal, because you have nothing to base it off of, right? It's like you're eating normal, but if say I just said start eating intuitive tomorrow, what would you do differently tomorrow that you're not doing right now, right? There's no learning because you don't know. It's sort of like a weird. A lot of times it seems like it's going to be easier, but it's not for this reason, because you're missing out on that education step, and you can't get into harmony with your body if your appetite hormones are off. If you have been chronically restricting and chronically dieting or yo-yo dieting on and off, or doing tons of cardio for a long time, your body has adapted, because we are masters at adapting and surviving, and it's not going to be giving you that input that leads you towards your goals. It's not going to be telling you that to be hungry in the morning. If you've been practicing intermittent fasting for years, you're not going to get hungry in the morning. You're going to have to kind of reprogram your body to have hunger and have those cues be right for you. So that's why intuitive eating can be really hard to start out from if you have no experience tracking at all. Okay, so this brings us to like our flow chart of what's right for you. I would say if you have never tracked anything before and you're not opposed to it, this is what I would recommend for most people, 80% of petite women. Go ahead and keep a 3-day food journal and just see what you ate. Try to keep it in the My Macros Plus app or MyFitnessPal so that it can break down for you what is the protein, fat, and carb rather than on a piece of paper. It can give you that data, and it can show you how much protein you're eating, how much carbs, how much fat, and that'll already give you a lot of information about your own diet and what foods you tend to gravitate towards. So off the bat, if you have never tried tracking or anything, go ahead, give it a try. If you have never tried tracking, but you are very, very, very worried about the numbers, I would also say if you've never tried it, you've never had a history of disordered eating, still go ahead and try it. If you have a history of disordered eating, numbers trigger you have tracked in the past and it has gone poorly, I would not track. You don't need to track macros. It's not gonna get you better results. It's really just a learning experience. So I would then just go to intuitive eating, but start learning the principles of what I call PFF. This is our intuitive eating measure or approach. Protein, fats, and fibrous carbs. This is how you build your plate so that you're always eating a balanced meal, and you can use your hand as your tool to guide your portions. So this is actually a really great tool you can use. Just use your palm for your portions, and because your palm is proportionate to your body, it's usually a pretty good judgment of what you should be having in a meal. So for example, your protein would be about a palm, about 3 to 4 ounces of protein. You're gonna have a palm, And for your fibrous carbs, you can use a scooped hand. For your healthy fats, about a thumb's worth. So from the base of the thumb up to top, not just the top, the whole thing, a thumb's worth. And for your, yeah, that's it, for your BFF. And just using your hand as a tool to guide your intuitive eating. This is great because you don't have to look at numbers, but you can still get an idea of portions, and you can still kind of learn about the different food groups that you're incorporating in your meals. If you've been tracking for a really long time and you're really sick of numbers, I would also suggest you just switch to intuitive eating, start to transition more. And at that point, you will have probably done a great job training your eye for what portions you need. That's how I am now. I know exactly. I can pretty much guess by looking at, what the weight of that food is, or just what I need in terms of what my portions look like. So if you've been tracking for a while, I would encourage you to switch over to intuitive and start to make that transition and get more comfortable trusting your body and getting in tune with those hunger hormones, which you've now established in regular intervals and you're in a good place with. At the end of the day, whether you're tracking macros or you're doing intuitive eating, you're still eating PFF, which is our approach to having a healthy metabolism, staying in fat burning mode, and gaining lean muscle mass, having that body recomposition. So they're not that different. It's just one has a lot of education packed into it, and the other one is just going to maybe free up some mental space if it's triggering for you. And whatever you choose, I fully support you. I teach both. I do not think one is better than the other. Like I said, one is better for you at this time, and that's how we teach it in the Petite Power program. I hope you guys loved this video and learned a lot about it. Let me know in the comments if you've ever tried tracking macros or intuitive eating before, which one you currently do. I would love to hear what you think the pros and cons are, if you agree with me. Let's just chat about it in the comments. And I also want to let you know that the Petite Power program is opening again in October. We only open it a few times a year based on how many people we can coach at once. We try to keep it really intimate. We have dietitians, accountability coaches, macro coaches, myself, and this badass community of petite women. And we are opening up the doors again in October. So if you want to get on the wait list, check it out below. You can sign up. It's no commitment to get on the wait list. You'll just be the first to be notified. And you'll be able to hop in and join the October round of Petite Power then. All right, you guys, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content tailored to petite women. And I will see you guys next week.